My name is Clara Towson, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
I am Francisca George, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Susan Leemans, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom. Yeah.
My name is Zainab Sammaz, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hey guys, my name is Sasha Vickery, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hi, my name is Lloyd Harris, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Jan Faria, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Yes.
Take one. Well done.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Paolini, and I'm a friend of the show.
Wow, Jasmine, you got it in one time.
Ready? Play.
Well, hello to everyone and welcome in. We are here for ATP Weekly, and I am joined by Fergus today. How are you today, Fergus?
I am good. Plenty to talk about today. Very excited to get into it.
Yeah, very exciting. And we will start with the most recent winner, which is Joao Fonseca. Gets his second ATP title. This time it's a 500 level. The first one was in early season, Buenos Aires, a 250. But today he beat he beat a player who really, really wanted this title. Let's put it that way. And who, it's not about needing the title, but getting over that hump is going to be big for Djokovic Fokina's career. I guess we'll kind of start there on the flip side. Going into this, kind of how did you evaluate this final?
Well, it's tricky. For me, I thought that Djokovic Fokina had to have been thinking that this was another golden opportunity. Obviously, this is his fifth ATP final. Other opportunities. Tsitsipas in Monte Carlo, that's a rough one, especially with the year it was and how Tsitsipas was playing. De Minaur earlier this year. I mean, in Washington, that's a tough one as always. But there have been a couple that have kind of slid by, especially Kecmanovic, which is one that he really should be winning, you'd think. This one was very different for me in the sense that Fonseca he played really well this week. Started with that win against GMP, and obviously Petr Pericard was the defending champion here, and it was serve bot on an indoor court, so tricky. But obviously played the tiebreaker so well, and then kind of just made his way through the week quite smoothly. It seemed that he was having this week where he just put together all the forehands were firing. And, when it gets to that point, then it's just like too hot to handle. And coming into it, I still had Djokovic Fokina as favourite because for me, Fonseca is still a little bit erratic for me on the forehand side. But he's toned that back from, mid-season. And just Djokovic Fokina just didn't handle the heat very well today at all. And the disappointment continues, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair analysis. I think going into this matchup, I thought, maybe a little bit of the experience factor would help Djokovic Fokina. 26 years old. It's going to be his fifth final. And obviously, looking at their weeks, they both got over some quick matches due to retirements or not even playing a second set. So there wasn't like too much physical there. And, I thought both players would be fresh, but, just Fokina kind of having a little bit more, I can do it this time. I'm playing it an 18-year-old. I thought that would kind of help him in this matchup, but really it was Fonseca who was just more aggressive from the start. I mean, he got an early hold and then just got straight to business and it was really playing high risk, high reward tennis, I thought, today. And it paid off. I mean, broke into love and then started cruising on the serve. Had, I think, 4 aces within the first 4 games and kind of didn't look back from there. And I think the second set, he started very well as well. But let's talk a little bit about these conditions. For Fonseca, we've had these questions of like kind of where what's going to suit him best. And obviously we're thinking about clay. Is it at altitude? Thinking about Madrid or, the slower. Obviously we saw him win a title in Buenos Aires. That's probably the slowest conditions on tour. But here in Basel, I mean, very, very quick, fairly slick. The bounce a little bit high, but, not often. And I thought, thinking about like Djokovic Fokina and his game style, I thought it's very like comparable when you look at the Brooksby matchup. And that was definitely difficult for Fokina, especially seeing him that early. But I thought that kind of matchup would help him out here against Fonseca. But today it felt like Fonseca just took his opportunities. There weren't many extended rallies. And, I think those extended rallies probably were going to suit Djokovic Fokina better. And Fonseca came out with that like fiery game style. And that was definitely impressive to me. What do you think about kind of his high risk, high reward tennis today?
Yeah, I mean, it's the entire year he plays this type of tennis. It's what he does, and he's made that clear from the start. This is the type of tennis he plays, and it can get him these big results, but it can also get him these kind of like I wouldn't say beat downs, but losses you wouldn't expect after the start of the year. He had obviously winning title in Buenos Aires and that win against Rublev at the AO. But yeah, listen, Fonseca's had overall, he's had a great year, but realistically, he hasn't done much between February and now. As in, he hasn't had like a crazy run that everyone's been like, oh, this is like where he properly, probably breaks out and, has a big run at a Masters event or, a Slam. I think his Slam results are round 2, round 3, round 3, and then round 2. So, it's been a solid year, but by no means has it been the year that, people were saying, be in the top 10 by the end of the year. I mean, those were crazy shouts anyway, but, there were people that were saying them. But today he was super confident on the forehand, nice and safe on the backhand, not really, over pressing, which he can do so easily. But kind of just working Djokovic Fokina around the court nicely. And obviously these two both had, I mean, the paths to the final are a little strange reading, like both having two walkovers / retirements. Djokovic Fokina having Humbert and Ruud retire, and Fonseca having Mensik walkover and Chapo rage quitting 2 games before the end. But yeah, so it was a strange week, but for me it was still, that the match against Pechi Pericard was kind of key, just getting over that hump, because he wasn't actually in great form. I mean, lost first round of Brussels to Van der Zandschulp, which obviously we know is, can produce crazy stuff, but,
Yeah.
But today, just very solid overall.
Yeah, I mean, definitely an interesting week, and we'll talk calendar a little bit deeper into the show. But I mean, Fonseca, he's up to 25 in the live rankings. So yeah, I mean, when we're evaluating his season, it's hard because you put a lot of expectations on an 18, 19-year-old kid, and he brings quite a crowd with him. But I think a very, very interesting, I guess, topic to bring up would be his decision-making. Him and his team decide not to go and compete on the Asian swing. And what they did, I guess, over that 1.5 month span is prep for the indoors. And, now we sit here today and you can definitely tip your cap and say, okay, that decision paid off, because for me, it was a little bit of question marks, but obviously, tight-knit team and they make their decisions very wholeheartedly. And yeah, I think another topic within that is kind of looking at his return game. And Fonseca, like historically over the season, just hasn't been good against these big servers or on these quick conditions because he's not good enough on return. And this week, you really saw him working on the chip return. And we can even point to the first match. That's a terrible draw, in Pechi Pericard, defending champion here. Yes, a little bit of pressure for Pechi Pericard coming to defend his title, but he did come from, the Brussels conditions, which are very quick. And I thought, yeah, this is going to be a difficult one and obviously kind of monumental when you look at the Fonseca decision to not go to the Asian swing. Like if he were to lose round one again, then you're really scratching your head because that would have been, back-to-back first round losses. So yeah, I mean, definitely a weird week, but totally deserving. You get a walkover over Menchik, interesting next gen matchup. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I don't know if it comes to your head, but almost, a year ago back in December, he's a next gen champion in those conditions in Jeddah. And now he's, standing as a champion today in Basel. So I think that the decision for me is, you can tip your cap to it. I don't know if you had any thoughts on the Fonseca decision to skip the Asian swing.
I don't hate it, to be honest. I think that it's something that, it's a little bit like there's a lull after the US, it's, whether you want to keep grinding out the rest of the season and finish strong, or, whether you kind of like slowly wind down. And, whether it was Fonseca was saying, let's skip Asia, let's recharge fully after the US swing and go big at the indoor. And, he might be thinking that indoor is a better opportunity for him, which is, not what we were expecting, but, maybe he feels that it was a bigger opportunity for him to make some real headway. And, now he has, it proved to be the right decision. And, he also, we have to remember that he's still developing as a player and his fitness is still becoming a big part of his game. And look at how brutal the conditions were in Asia. Would he have actually made that much progress in Asia apart from being absolutely knackered for this part of the season? Probably not.
Yep.
So it's a strange decision, not one that a young player makes too often, as they just want to play as much tennis as they can. But they've clearly thought about it. He's clearly thought about it, and his team have clearly thought about it. Deeply, and it's the right decision at the end of the day for him.
Yep. Yeah. I want to bring up one more topic about Fonseca. We know his forehand is so big, but I've always been one who's been keen on his backhand, from like a technical perspective to actually pulling off very, very clean off that wing. And I thought match point was a very fitting ending the way he did it, because his ability to defend, and I'm not going to go that far, but you look at Jannik Sinner, the way he's able to slide on that foot and create such angle when defending off that wing. Fonseca is really trying to emulate that, and he did a good job on the pass today on match point. But that was something that worked well for him this week. His ability to defend, turn defense into offense out of the backhand wing, and really work on that cross court pass. He hit it very, very successfully this week. And yeah, I mean, definitely happy for the kid and happy for the tennis world, because we know how much he's hyped up week in, week out. And, it's cool to see it come into fruition. And also just the fearlessness he had in this final. You think back to February, that was against Franz Cerundolo in his home country. And that was obviously a very, very, crazy atmosphere. But, fast forward to, now we're in October, the end of October, and I feel like it's just a totally more mature Fonseca who was not afraid of the moment at all. And obviously it helps not playing someone in their home country, but, he just had a look of, confidence and fearlessness despite, losing a break in the first set. And, he was always looking to be on the attack. And I thought that really benefited him here. So and any last words on, Fonseca's run, or we can bring up any other players that you think are worth mentioning?
Well, I just want to, obviously the walkover from Menchik is a big moment in his week. Menchik is, realistically, and I'm thinking realistically, Menchik probably does win that matchup. It's tight, but you have to think it'll be close. And it would at least go 3.
Let's put the asterisk on it and say if healthy.
Yeah.
Because I don't think Menchik has been healthy.
No. You can only play what's in front of you. And, the wins over Munar, and, I'm going to count the Chapeau win because, Chapeau rage bait.
Set down.
And, he just played the final really intelligently. Played it his way, but in a way that wasn't going to compromise him, if things got tricky. Seemed like he was always going to win it as soon as the first break went his way. They felt so much more confident, so much more fluid. Davidovich Fokina just kind of not. It just felt like he wasn't really, all there. He just kind of struggled to impose himself on the court. Grinding ability is not something to have on an indoor hard court. It's a great factor, but Fonseca, with his playing so big, it just didn't really work for him today. I feel like it was maybe the game plan was kind of wait for him to miss, which I don't know what the game plan was, but it's not something you want to be doing. It just felt like it wasn't the right put together from Fokina today, and the time to wait still goes on, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think I point to the start of the match. I mean, it just Fokina down 1-love serving and gets broken to love, and you could kind of just see him kind of mentally fighting the nerves and trying to get over the hump, and it just never really clicked. But on the flip side for Fonseca, didn't worry about it, and also underrated. I know I talked about the backhand as well, but the serving, across the week was very good, but even today, very, very impressive behind his serve. Let's get some stats here. He had 7 aces today, 80% clip, 76 behind the first, and then 146% of those second serve points. So just all together did a really good job, generated 13 break points on return, So, I mean, it's definitely a deserving win, and you could definitely see, the confidence coming out, and that, is credit to him and his hard work, and also, his team for putting in the effort the last, month and a half in the indoors. So, and then also tie breaks. I just wrote it down, but 3-1 in tie breaks this tournament. Yesterday against Munar, obviously, you don't really know what you're going to get from Munar, and he was a player I was thinking about this week in terms of just how drastic his game has changed and his ability to produce results on hard courts. But yeah, and yeah, as the producer mentioned, Fonseca now breaks in the top 30. Yeah, he is now 25 in the live ranking. So
28.
28, is that what it is?
Yeah, 28.
Okay. So I mean, we talk about the season. Expectations are high. Yeah, it's pretty good for.
But then again, it's like this is what I was saying, is in like he's had a great season, and still he's got so many opportunities to gain points, but for like 5/6 of the year.
Yep.
Like this is a perfect setup year for next year for him to actually go fully next year.
Yeah. I guess we'll leave it at this. Where does Davidovich Fokina go from here? Does he get a title in his career? Just some quick thoughts there.
26, still got at least, you'd think, 5 or 6 more years at the very least. Yeah. Oh, but like, is it the longer this goes on, like the longer it like kind of gets worse?
I mean, yeah, it's tough. I mean, what is that? 3 500 levels, Washington, Acapulco here, and then it was Delray
and Monte Carlo.
Yep. So I mean,
Delray should have won.
He's been at all these stops, and he even said it. Like Fonseca played unbelievable today, but he can't complain. He's in 4 finals this year, and they unfortunately always end in a heartbreak. So I think, career year, right? Top 15 player.
Yes,
and
he's top 15 player.
Yep.
There's been. It's just crazy to think I could be a top 15 player and not have a title. That's just a joke, really, isn't it?
I do think he gets one. Is my answer.
Yeah.
So,
okay, where would it be?
Where, as in,
is it going to be somewhere really
next year?
Is it going to be like Chengdu, like next year? Like, something.
Why not? Why not like just go to Hong Kong and start
Yeah,
the
yeah.
year off with the title like Alex Mueller did?
Yeah. Yeah, like literally, like come, like put everything into that first week.
I think he's
put
totally
everything
doable.
into Auckland or like
Exactly, or Brisbane or whatever it is.
Yeah. Hong Kong actually could be a shout as well. Hong Kong
Yeah,
usually
I wonder if he goes there.
too stacked. Probably will be like top 5 seeds, or top 3 seeds if he goes to Hong Kong.
Yeah,
like that's if Foki wants to hit us up for schedule advice, that'd be good.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome. So yeah, let's hope he can get it done in January of 2026. But hey, there's still a few more events on the calendar, and we shall see. But yeah, I think we're good there. I think the only other conversation we can kind of intertwine it, but just the amount of retirements this week was difficult across the tournaments, but it was primarily difficult in Basel. So I think we'll revisit that kind of more on the calendar conversation. So next, let's switch our focus to Vienna, where Jannik Sinner is a title winner again there. This is his second title in Vienna. But he took down Sasha Zverev, and it was a 3-setter. 3-6, 6-3, 7-5. Overall thoughts on this week for Jannik Sinner, Fergus?
Super robotic, kind of that win against Altmaier. Altmaier was, I actually feared for everyone at that moment. What was it, 11-2? But then he kind of, simmered out a little bit in terms of Sinner standards, couple tie breaks. But yeah, just classic Jannik Sinner week, really. Today, 44 winners, 10 unforced errors. That's just ridiculous. Can't believe Zverev still leads the head-to-head. Oh no, it's now equal. Sorry, it's now equal. 4-all. But just looking at Sinner's run, Altmaier, Kaboli, Bublik, Dimonor, Zverev. Dimonor, a grim matchup. It's never really going to be too much of an issue, unfortunately, for Jannik. Bublik could have been a huge issue, but kind of just wasn't fully able to. Well, actually, there's nothing Bublik really could have done. It's just Sinner's just incredible ability to return that huge sub Bublik's and, kind of deal with the variability that Bublik can throw at him. And yeah, just a few. It was just Sinner was just way too solid that day. But yeah, I mean, obviously you could say, he played the second seed in the final. It's the matchup you want, but Zverev played that first set really well, but you feel if you're going to beat Sinner in 3, it has to be in straights, right? Or there has to be something go wrong. And obviously Sinner did start cramping it in the end of the third. Still, my only big factor for Sinner is that the physicality is still a little bit not there for me. If you go 5 with Sinner, and he's never won a match over 3 hours, I believe, something like that. So it's the only thing I'm ever gonna look at with Sinner. Everything else is pretty much pitch perfect, but it's a pretty standard week. Bit more of an entertaining final that I know thought it was going to be. Zverev with an unwatchable game style and Sinner very robotic. But yeah, good week for Jannik as always, and kind of a good week for Sasha. Kind of got past that Fernley challenge on the first try, which was kind of a big moment for him just to kind of get his week rolling. But yeah, Sinner was always, barring a miracle, is going to win here.
Yeah. I mean, a few things to evaluate. I kind of want to start with the conditions. I think this court is very interesting, right? I mean, it's an indoor court, fairly quick. It's definitely quick, but the bounce is something that I find very interesting. It's more of like a high bouncing court, and looking at some of Sinner's opponents, I think Cabali, that was interesting for me because I was like, okay, these are kind of perfect conditions and for Cabali, and it's always interesting to me to have you're playing a compatriot and who knows what can happen, but just seeing him force a tiebreak was like, okay, there's some chance. And then I don't think Sinner loves playing Bublik. I mean, I don't think anyone really enjoys playing Bublik, but going into that matchup, you just don't really know what to expect, and you don't know what type of, Sasha Bublik's going to show up. So that's always difficult. And I thought he did well to kind of handle that. And, Bublik did all he could to save as many break points as he could to stay in that match. But unfortunately, it eventually panned out the way it was supposed to. And then ADM is like, ugh, I don't know. Has he gotten a set off Sinner?
Yeah.
Back in the day?
Beijing.
Okay. Right.
That was the only set, I believe. I think it's, 11-0?
Yeah.
Now the head-to-head.
Yeah, it's 12.
11. Yeah, 12-1.
One was a walkover, but yeah. So
yeah,
I think they even suited up for that one. But yeah, I mean, you look at it and it's like, yeah, those are annoying players to play against. But even ADM actually gave more of a fight than I thought he would. Just like kind of from the serving all the way through. I wasn't sure if like ADM's hip was going to bother him at all. Looked okay, and
yeah,
that was interesting. But yeah, I guess we'll kind of hone in on the final here. For Zverev, thought he would get smoked. I mean, I'm sure a lot of us did, but and it's funny because we're talking about a top 5 player here, and the gap is that big, just between 2 and 5, even 2 and 3 and 4. But he was very, very lethargic, I thought, coming in through these rounds. I mean, you talk about the matchup with Fernley first round. It's their 4th meeting in 2025. And, you kind of thought that would be a free swinging match for Fernley, and he made it as competitive as he could, right? And then Arnaldi, another guy who I think poses problems, but just doesn't believe in himself. Greek Sport, he got that walkover. I thought that was vital. I think
Greek Sport, always tricky.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. And it's funny because I don't know if you've heard him on the Changeover podcast kind of talk about that match in Indian Wells and what it was like playing Zverev and kind of where your mental's at. But today, let's just talk about, and Musetti obviously yesterday, good win.
Yeah,
kind of like,
actually very solid. But Musetti again, indoor hard court, obviously not. Like, it's not like we're playing him on clay. I'd actually love to see that matchup of Zverev, Musetti on clay. That'd be very entertaining. But yeah, not on this surface.
Interesting. So yeah, I mean, today I was surprised, but it was really about Zverev and his serving ability. Guy that big. We talk about some of the fun things that the ATP does, and it's like, what would you steal from another player? And a lot of guys would say having Sasha Zverev serve. It's big, it's consistent, and that really paved the way for him today. And especially his ability to close out the first set from 30-all. Did a great job, but then it was, Jannik Sinner turn to get that early break and kind of even out the match. And then come the third set, as I'm coined, Brenner, scoreboard pressure, Morton. I thought that was kind of playing a factor a bit. Zverev having the ability to I think he got out of a 2-2 game that was really vital and held for 3-2, and was just kind of inching his way, fairly routine holds, and that can kind of have an effect. And I think Zverev did have a love 15 in either the 4-all game or 4-5 game or 3-4 game, and wasn't able to kind of capitalize on it. But I guess I'll start with this. Fergus, what impressed me was the Zverev forehand. It was actually fairly solid today. Would you expect that? Or, I feel like most players are looking to attack that often.
I think it's crazy that we're talking about how his forehand was, okay, when this guy's the third best player in the world. I mean,
yeah,
it's crazy that we have to say that, right?
Yep.
Yeah. For the most part, the forehand was more aggressive today than it has been in previous matchups. Obviously, just like locking into a backhand to backhand battle is great because, Zverev arguably has the second best backhand on tour. Djokovic obviously still being number one. But forehand's always been a weakness. It was pretty good today, especially in that first set, finding some depth and some real spin.
Yep.
And it was good. But Sinner's just way too good at dealing with those heavy balls deep in the court. He just neutralizes it so well. Off both wings, has the best sliding backhand of all time. And it's not really like close. And the fact that he can do that with such ease, kind of really neutralizes it so well. So, yes, the forehand was good today, but, he's going to have to do something real special to, out-hit a forehand for Jannik Sinner, especially with the amount of pace and speed Sinner gets on it. I mean, it actually looks like he's slapping the ball, but when you slow down his motion, he's just putting so many revs onto the ball. It's ridiculous. But, yeah, it was good, but, has to be better.
I'd agree with that. And I think that's something that comes to mind, Fergus. What you mentioned is like, I was trying to gauge the belief in Zverev today because you think about his comments that he made, a few weeks back and, court conditions and whatnot and just beating these top two players now, Alcaraz and Sinner. I was gauging that and it was still tough to read. I'm like, yeah, there's that point where he believes in himself and he thinks he can do it. But I think at the same time, he knows once he gets to like a deuce battle, like the odds aren't in his favor. And he did show some, dejected sort of characteristics and mannerisms. So I think that's important. Like, I think he can bring a little bit more belief and kind of energy to his body. We know that's not who he is. I haven't seen him get that excited in a while. But I think if he was able to bring more of that, especially when you see Sinner cramping a bit and you see some bad mannerisms on the other side of the court, like try and get yourself up for it. Try and get yourself going and really lock in on return games because Zverev was doing just fine behind his serve today. And yeah, I mean, I mentioned the forehand. It held up for a while and it was holding up exchanges, but when you get in those kind of longer rallies with Sinner, you just see him lock in on a different level, those bigger points. And I think on those bigger points, he ups the power, he ups the pace, but he doesn't go big margins, right? He doesn't go for small margins. He's going for, more safe shots, but he's just hitting it with so much depth. And as you mentioned, the RPMs, like on this court, the ball is able to sit up a little higher, and that's when he's just able to smack it and really create more angle on that forehand wing. So that was really, I think, the teller. Just those longer exchanges, like Zverev. Yes, you see how good the backhand is, and Sinner. Another thing that surprised me, he's not afraid to go there, especially off the return. He actually likes starting those points out from that backhand wing and then kind of going from there, middle of the court. But yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, it's just like it doesn't have a. It's like two forehands. I know people have said that before, but when he goes to the back, it's just like another forehand. And I thought he was just doing a good job to find ways to just inch Zverev back, even though he's already very, very deep in the court. But he finds ways to push Zverev back, and then he looks for angle. And it's consistently going to the backhand wing. That's where he likes to attack. No matter how good the Zverev backhand is, he was, happy taking that forehand inside out, or if he gets a shorter backhand, just hitting it with a lot of angle and joining the net. And so overall, I mean, obviously a little bit tighter than I thought, probably tighter than you thought, but Sinner got the job done in that pressure moment, the 5-all game. And that's a must hold for Zverev. At least give yourself the tiebreak opportunity and have a little bit of kind of free play in that final 12th game, but wasn't able to get over the hump. And Jannik Sinner is a champion once again in Vienna. Let's see if there are any other storylines you want to talk about. Go ahead.
First thing, I'll just look at Valdez Tito's question. I I would be very surprised if he withdraws from Paris, has a bye. So, at least we'll be waiting another day, if not two. And Riyadh, they're not proper matches. Like, let's get real. They're not proper matches. He'll be fine. And I think he will be fine. He won't be pulling out of Paris. Just looking at Zverev sorry, go on.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to tell you to hold that thought because you did touch on it quickly, and I kind of let it slip my mind. But the Jannik Sinner and the physical kind of, we'll call it situation.
Yeah,
it does have a magnifying glass on it because we thought early in his career, like that was something that was holding him back a bit. As you mentioned, like hours or matches going over 3 hours, not in his favor. But I kind of thought like we put those conversations to bed. When you think about like the start of the year, Australian Open against Holger Rune, if you remember, that third set being so vital after it was one apiece, but then he's going 5 hours with Carlos. But then again, it kind of shows up again. Cincinnati, yes, that was more of like an illness. We see it in Shanghai against Greek Sport, and now here, like even in indoor conditions, he's grabbing that left hamstring, and it just breaks to question like, is this something that like we're still going to be concerned about? I mean, this is arguably, I'm not going to like say anything. We have a top 2 player in the world here, and he's by far ahead of the pack from everyone else besides Carlos Alcaraz. Like, what do these physical problems mean? It's something that he doesn't really, it doesn't look like it affects him necessarily on the court, but he's always looking to grab to that hamstring or whatever the problem may be.
It's not the situation for me, which I saw with Murray for so long, is that he could be absolutely like dying in between points, but as soon as the point is going, he's giving absolutely everything he's got, acting like he doesn't have anything wrong. Sinner is similar in that sense, but it seems that there's not a genuine, it's strange. They kind of like come out of nowhere, like kind of like these issues come up like in the middle of like the second set, if it's tight, and I don't think I've ever had it where Sinner's had an issue where he's in control, he's in control of the match, and he has an issue, and I'm not being like Pavi G right now, like please don't come after me for but I'm just saying that like I've never seen Sinner have cramp when he's like 4-2 up in the second after winning a tight like 7-6 first set. It's just a little bit different. I think we always will be having these conversations about like, is he fine? Like if a match not against Carlos goes 5, I don't remember I actually think the last time he went 5 in a match that wasn't Carlos was maybe Zverev, US Open 23, lost. Just thinking that Medvedev. No, that was 4 at Wimbledon.
Yeah, no, it sounds right. It sounds right.
So yeah, just like we just haven't had. Yes, Medvedev AO 2024.
Okay.
That did go 5. You are correct. I just haven't seen like there's not a shed load of evidence to show that when it gets really physical that he's bound to come out on top. But it's a different question altogether.
No, that's a very fair answer, and I appreciate you bringing that up because it's a good point, right? There aren't a lot of issues when things are going right. But once again, as you talk about with players like Murray or Monfils and Sinner, like I'm not the one to read too much into the body language, because today it was a lot of the hobbling on the return games, and then as the match went on, he was holding to love or holding to 15, and it was fairly casual. So it's just something that catches the eye, and it's something to think about. But
I just wanted to talk about Zverev for a second, and
Sure.
how he has been saying over the last however long that he wants to, he feels he can join Alcaraz and Sinner on this extreme other level that these two are on, and it's clear that they are. Zverev's last 5 wins combined against Sinner and Alcaraz. 4 against Alcaraz, 1 against Sinner. That 1 against Sinner being at the US, and then he's beaten Alcaraz twice at Tour Finals in 23 and 24. Once at Roland Garros in 22, and once at the AO in 24 as well. It just seems that Carlos has obviously hit his. For me, this is peak Carlos. Whether we see even better Carlos in the future, but at the moment, this is the best Carlos we've seen as of so far. He's like a ridiculous 46-2 in the last since March or April. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
It won't get better than that. Simple. One of them was pretty much a retirement. Holger may have won in Barcelona, but that's Carlos was literally dying on the floor. Sinner, on the other hand, Sinner is a bad matchup for Zverev. Since post-puke Sinner is a terrible matchup for Zverev, mainly because Zverev's biggest quality is being able to stick in a backhand-to-backhand rally and win every single time. Every single time. And the big serve. The big serve is always neutralized by Jannik. I think one of the best moments of this, especially in clutch moments, Sinner was playing Diallo. Cincinnati was down a set point. Diallo massive up the tee. Sinner somehow hits the craziest return I've ever seen. It's nuts, especially set point down. He's always going to neutralize. Well, not always, but he has such a good ratio of neutralizing big first serves. And Sinner has such a strong backhand that it's not as effective against anyone. He is anyone, Sinner is just a terrible matchup for Zverev. That's why I just feel like he will never be able to get over this hump unless he tries something different. His variety in his game is not there. It's not there. The drop shot isn't good enough to challenge Sinner, even because Sinner's movement's so good. But it's just a bad matchup. And now it's a bad matchup against Carlos because Carlos is Carlos.
Yep. And yes, I agree with you. I was at that match watching that serve. I said, how is that possible? And we went to 6-6 in the breakers, switch sides, and Jannik Sinner took that set and the match. But yeah, last thing for me, because you're right. I mean, even today, 5-5, 40 all in the third set, and it's long exchange, playing tight backhands kind of centrally, and then Zverev was able to create a little bit more width and angle on this backhand exchange, and it was Sinner who took it upon himself to go backhand down the line, cleans the line, hits a winner, gets his break point, and ends up taking the match. So that's what I'm always thinking, because it always comes back to this. You think about the Labor Cup and Federer and Nadal. It's like telling Zverev, you just have to be more aggressive in the big moments if you want to, be a winner in this sport and cross that line, get over the hump. And I think in those matchups, you just has to be a little bit more aggressive. It's not about changing necessarily your game style. Your serve can take you far away. And today, the forehand, it has to give him confidence. And as you mentioned, crazy conversation to be having with a top 5 player, but was able to at least kind of weather the storm off that wing and gave himself a really good chance today in a 500 level final.
I would happily say that in big moments, every single other member of the top 20 are more aggressive in big moments.
100%.
If we're looking Fokina, Kachanov, Medvedev, Holger, Draper, Auger-Aliassime, Ruud, Musetti, Shelton, de Minaur, Djokovic, Fritz, Jannik, and Carlos. Every other person is more gutsy in big moments than, or at least try something different, throws in a different play. In the big moments, Shelton, serve and volley. Draper serves and volleys. Carlos serves and volleys. These guys hit big. The only person that's slightly different because of his game style is Medvedev. But, he hits a crazy, return from, 15 feet behind the baseline. And, Zverev can't do that. So it's a big thing that's holding him back.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, let's move on because we had some breaking news in the tennis world. You know, we're talking a lot about calendar injuries, whatever it may be, but here we are. It's Saudi Arabia is set to host a new ATP Masters 1000 level event. It was through the Surge Sports Investments, which is part of Saudi Arabia's public investment fund, and the tournament is set to debut on the tennis calendar as early as 2028. And we're not too sure where it's going to fall in the calendar, but right now, the most likely spot would be in February. Fergus, initial reactions to this new tournament?
Yeah, there are lots of ways to look at this. You know, there's the way that we look at this is that money, that this is a huge money opportunity. You know, they already host the WTA Finals in Riyadh. They already host the WTA Finals in Riyadh, and you know you've been there for the last couple of years. You know, turnout from fans isn't something that is like amazing. It was spoken about last year that, you know, there wasn't like a huge amount of people turning up to watch the WTA Finals. You know, even it's like such a big event. This is, I wouldn't say it's purely a money grab, but I would say that there's definitely a heavy influence on money involved. It's also that I just feel like that's like the complete opposite of what everyone has been saying. Everyone's been saying, listen, we need to make the year shorter. There needs to be less events in the year. And we've just gone and added an event. And everyone's like, well, what are we doing? It's kind of ironic that in the same week, we add another tournament to the calendar. We have this many retirements in the two biggest ATP tournaments. You know, it's like, well, why would we do this when, you know, we have this much going on already? Yes, you would probably have more playing it because it's in February, again, start of the year. Everyone goes from AO and then kind of just goes to Doha, or they play the French indoor tournaments, you know, Rotterdam. Mm-hmm. And that's the only space on the calendar to possibly fit in another Masters. But you have to do some serious rearranging of the calendar for me. Otherwise, you're just gonna have no one play this, and it's just a fail. But
yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting because in my head, I thought this was only a matter of time. I feel like they have had these conversations ongoing the last year and a half, and you know, Saudi Arabia is continuing to show like just a genuine interest, a commitment to tennis. And that's kind of through, obviously, the WTA Finals, right? That happened in Jeddah, and then you have Next Gen, which is now in Riyadh. So, I mean, look, those are two big events, and yes, you mentioned the crowd. That's something that I feel like we're not as much exposed to. You know, we do get some good content, but we don't really understand what's going on, kind of from a day-to-day behind the scenes, and kind of like the interest, the excitement from there. But I know this is something that, you know, they've been working on. They're trying to continue to grow kind of the sport and entertainment industry over there. And that's where they're putting their money into. I think something that's important to note is obviously, right, it's a non-mandatory event. So we have 9 Masters on the calendar right now. One of them is optional or non-mandatory, and that is Monte Carlo. But this one is like Monte Carlo. So the plan is to make it kind of a 1-week Masters event, which we only have 2 of on the calendar, in Paris Bercy next week and Monte Carlo. And it's also going to be a 56-player field. So look, my honest reality is like, I think this tournament is going to blow up because it's always a little bit of a lull period. You know, I think I'm thinking right now, and the next question I want to pose to you is kind of like, who does this hurt? Especially from a calendar perspective, a tournament perspective. And like one thought that comes to me, or 2 of them, Rotterdam, Golden Swing. But apart from that, you have an opportunity to, you know, after the Australian Open, there's kind of always a lull period before we get to our first Masters event in the Sunshine Double. So I think this kind of fills that void. And as you're saying, like we have a reduced player field. So I think it's going to be, as you mentioned, like a lot of guys are going to end up loving this tournament. It's going to be big money for an 1,000 event, I think, especially come 2028. So look, I think we'll have different conversations kind of a year or two from now, but I think it will be overall a success just kind of because it falls in that timeline. So yeah, as I mentioned, Fergus, I mean, who do you think this impacts the most from a calendar perspective, tournament perspective?
Yeah, Rotterdam and the French, I think it's Marseille and then Montpellier.
Yep.
Probably Doha and Dubai, but they have the women's tournaments there as well.
Right.
So it's kind of less, of a big effect. I feel like this could work because if the women have Doha and Dubai 1000s, back to back, and then they go straight into the Sunshine Double pretty much. It works for them. And we because it's a 56 player field, you feel like it might work out because, it's only a 1 week Masters. We all are. There is something completely different about 1 week Masters than 2 week Masters. 1 week Masters on day one, you've got really good matchups all tennis for all 7 of the days is really good. These 2 week Masters, they drag kind of, when it's not a high quality event, but this could work. For me, I still don't see it. I'd need to see it to believe it for me.
No, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, that's why I mentioned the money, and our producer is echoing that, the appearance fees. You think about the Golden Swing, Zverev doing it this year, Holger Rune, Musetti. I think, and it's not on the top of my mind right now, but we have another big player going there next year, maybe. So I think that can just kind of help fill this sort of void where I'm not sure if that's going to be a big destination or an option that players take. This year it was Zverev trying to prep for the clay season. Yeah, he's making a lot of money to go there. So I think this might be just a better way to accumulate the top players in the same location and make it just a very exciting week of tennis. That's kind of where I see the upside in this tournament, the scheduling, and the first big event after the Australian Open. But yeah, we'll see how it progresses. And I guess the other thing to bring up, don't want to spend too much time on it, but the scheduling, I know you talked a little bit about last week. We saw quite a lot of retirements this week, but I think that was more so because of a heavy load. I mean, players like Casper Ruud, Felix Auger-Aliassime, Ugo Humbert, all players who were in the final of last week. And I think that makes a big difference because, you're looking at their 7th, 8th match in an 11-day span. And then you're also thinking about, Paris Bercy on the flip side of it. I think all three, and you bring up Shapovalov as well, played a semifinal last week in Stockholm. He wants to compete in Paris as well. So I think this was kind of more of a, prep yourself, especially Felix, one last big run. And that'll kind of bring us into the race to Turin and kind of the Paris conversation where we are at the final Masters event on the calendar. Paris Bercy. Do you have anything quickly, though, on the kind of player health situation that we have in our sport?
It's a very hot topic at the moment. Obviously, I talked about it last week with Jack about Draper's tweet and Fritz, fighting 100 people in the comments.
Mm-hmm.
And listen, we can't say anything from our perspective. We don't know how much work they do. They train 4 hours a day, every day, and they play. They play every single day of the week, and it's a big workload. It is, and the calendar for me should be shorter. We should end October, beginning of October. ATP Finals should be beginning of October, 2 months off, and then we start again fresh in Jan. And I think that we could possibly cut out some tournaments. There are tournaments, obviously, that will, lose their marketing, lose their space on the calendar. But there are tournaments that can go. There are unnecessary weeks in the year. There are lulls in the year for me. Weeks after slams are often those lulls, and can we take a week off? Do we have a week of no tennis? Like, it's an idea. Obviously it affects the revenue of those certain tournaments, but would taking a week off after slams be a bad idea? No, absolutely it wouldn't. But yeah, there's such a long conversation to be had, and we can make an entire episode on it. But yeah.
Yep. No, it's fair, and obviously it's just a long season, so you get past the Asian swing, and we're in month 10, 11 almost.
Get past the US Open, I'm ready to call it a day.
Yeah.
Honestly.
So yeah, but let's focus these last topic on Paris-Bercy and the race to Turin. We'll start in Paris. I think the big story out of Paris right now is the conditions change. I remember last year just being an absolute, ice rink there. I think the CPI was like 43.3 or something like that, which is the court speed index. And this year, I think it's already, we've only gotten through qualies. I don't know the exact data, so I'm not going to act like I do. But what we do know is it's slower. They slowed down the courts. And it's definitely an interesting decision for a few reasons, right? One, it was one of the quickest, if not the quickest, next to Cincinnati and Shanghai in terms of court speed on tour. And then secondly, it's like we know what Zverev said, or we know what Federer said. Slowing down courts to help Jannik Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz meet in a final. So any thoughts on them slowing down the courts? Definitely surprised me, but any thoughts there?
Yeah, it's good. I think Carlos said in an interview earlier this week, he was happy that they've slowed down the courts, because it's not, he said that it's not a entire serving fest, and, things are, slightly more enjoyable to play on. You're not playing these really short points, it's kind of, grinding it out, which kind of works better for Carlos in a sense. Obviously it's going to, fuel him. Carlos is still my favorite to win this week. But in terms of the courts, I think it helps. I think it helps everyone that didn't play last week. I think that everyone that is fresh and feeling ready to go is going to love it this year. And I think that everyone that played a long week this week is going to hate it, because you're going to have to play longer matches, longer points. You can't use that serve to bail you out, Sasha Zverev. And it's like, I don't know. But personally, I like it because, I like slower conditions. I like seeing longer points. I like seeing really long matches, battles, real physical, battles. Leave it all out on the court. That's the type of tennis I want to watch, which is, why we love clay tennis. But, as much as I also love grass tennis, but that's a different conversation.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, here we are, final Masters event, and the race to Turin is obviously heating up. And I guess the primary focus at this point would be between two players, or three rather, because we have Djokovic, who is very, very unlikely to play, given that he did drop out of Paris. I don't know if you think differently, but I don't.
I don't know. It's like flipping a coin. And I think it's a bit less than flipping a coin. I think it's 60-40. He doesn't play for me. But then they made that they made that huge, he's qualified, video. And they posted it, they were so gassed that he was gonna play. But I just don't think he does. Mainly because I just don't think he. The only way I can see him benefiting playing the ATP Finals is that if he plays either Alcaraz or Sinner, and he beats them. If he beats one of the two of them in Turin, then I think it would have been worthwhile. Even if he doesn't win the entire tournament, even if they're in the round robin, if he beats either Carlos or Jannik, and he doesn't win the entire tournament, I think it would have been worth it. if not, he can beat Zverev, he can beat Fritz, he can beat Shelton, he can beat all these guys with his eyes shut pretty much. It's the other two. It's the big two. He's been eyeing these two for the entirety of the year. And whether it's, he goes back to Serbia and he just, chills. Well, Athens, actually. He's playing in Athens, isn't he? So, yeah.
Yes, he is. New residency. Thought it was...
But yeah, you were talking about the race, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, there's... How interesting can it get? I guess is my question, given that we're pretty set in stone here on the very, very top half of this race. But I mean, does Casper Ruud have a chance? Does Medvedev have a chance? I think it's a little far-fetched at this point. But given no Novak Djokovic, that would have Felix as the 8 slot, Musetti as the 7 slot. Let's take a quick look at kind of the draw here. I don't know if you could pull it up on your end. Let's see here. Felix is going to play a qualifier. I don't know if they've been placed yet. It should be happening soon. And then he would draw the winner of Nakashima, Alexander Mueller, and go from there.
Draw.
Setting up a potential clash with Casper Ruud in the round of 16.
I think he wins that anyway.
Yep. Take a look at Musetti. Gets to bye. Play either Sonego or a qualifier.
It's a nice draw.
Yeah, and then he could potentially meet Medvedev in that round of 16. So I actually do have some interesting storylines thanks to the draw. We could be having some really, really interesting matches on Wednesday of next week. Or Thursday, rather. Yeah. So, yeah, definitely something to look out for. I don't think there's too much else to be said. I think I'm just interested to kind of see these conditions. It's a new location. Does that play into it? Did I forget that? Because they are not in the same location as last year, I am pretty sure. So you've heard a little bit of conversation about the new setup in there. There's like only curtains. So I guess the sound is going to be very, very prominent. And think about home crowd. Think about last year. And I guess we'll leave off with this, Fergus, before I hand it over to you for final thoughts. But I remember last year, every wild card did so well in Paris. And a reason why is because, Paris Bercy, that is, because they sped up the court so that, they would help it helped the wild cards have a good chance. And, now you think about players like Atman and, other Frenchmen who are getting these wild cards. It might not help. So, yeah, new location. So that's definitely interesting. We'll see how this kind of setup works.
Yeah, I think curtains will be interesting. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't envy anyone playing on center court. Kind of, you have someone like, I don't know, if it's like Vacheron Cazor, like round 2.
Cazor, that's the other wild card.
Yeah. Like that would be like, it'd be so loud in there, like so loud. And it gets to the point, like, it was a couple of years ago, Zverev, I can't remember who Zverev was playing. Zverev was playing someone in Miami, and they had to stop play because the intercom on the other court was so loud that it was like basically like if we had so well inside the stadium that they stopped playing until he stopped speaking. I just feel like that could be a little bit of it's almost like a factor here this week. If you could block out the noise, who deals with the noise the best in, the tough moments? And whether we'll see a hindrance this week in like a big point on like, if you hear someone screaming from the next court, whether there's a hindrance. It's just something to think about. But yeah, should be interesting. We'll have a 56 draw. There are some great matchups in here.
Yeah, let's go. We can fire out. We don't have to preview, but I mean, our producer just mentioned a potential Rinderknecht Vacheron clash in round 2. But they both have tough matches. I won't lie. Rinderknecht playing Marajan, Vachereau taking on Lehechka. And I know we didn't talk about Vachereau this week. But yeah, definitely a respectable performance. Thought he had chances to beat Brits. So yeah, I was definitely impressed.
Just looking at some round one draws, obviously. So Popper and Bublik, that should be good. Greek Sport Diallo, that should be quite good.
Yeah.
Petchy Parakot Dimitrov, that is tough comeback for Dimitrov.
Oh,
I don't know how much. Don't know how much the course have slowed down. Obviously, those have slowed down, but that's a no rhythm against Petchy Parakot whatsoever. So that's gonna be a tough.
Fokina and Humbert. Opener, as they just played yesterday.
Yeah.
With the Humbert retirement. So interesting, and we know how much Humbert loves this tournament.
Yeah, finalist, defending final points from last year.
That's Alcaraz last year. So
that's a tough first round to start defending points.
Yeah.
And Kachanov, bearing in mind, has had an awful run of form and has semi-final points to defend here this week. Has Ethan Quinn, but Ethan. Oh, right. No, because Bonzi just pulled out, didn't he?
Right.
Yeah, so Quinn's lucky loser, I assume. Has got in. And then play.
The qualifiers were placed. Apologies. I was looking at a different.
Who's fun? We'll try to keep my Britishness out of this conversation. But yeah, tough draw for Kachanov. I just feel like he's just had it. I just want to look at quickly. I'll touch on his losses in the last month or so, because this was the biggest his biggest part of the season. Obviously, won the title last year in Almaty, finalist in Vienna, and then semi-finals in Paris. And he has since at the US lost to Majak in 5. That's pretty tough. Lost first round in Beijing to Müller. Lost first round in Shanghai to Shang. Lost first round in Almaty to Struff. Lost first round in Vienna to Greek Sport. Yep. It's not great.
Yeah. A few of those, I think Almaty round 2 because of the bye, but regardless, losing your first match at these tournament is tough. One more quick thing to mention: Grigor Dimitrov is back this week, taking on GMP, which is no fun. You're not going to get a lot of rhythm, as you mentioned.
Absolutely zero.
Yeah, but hey, definitely interesting to see here. Other than that,
I don't think so.
I'm just interested to see if Shelton. I just think hasn't had a lot of form, rhythm, and I think that's hurt him a lot.
I think the bye almost compromises him. Yeah.
But either way, you're getting a guy that is a very consistent, ball maker in terms of Mahach or Kabali. So
yeah, it's
not necessarily.
If Mahach does come through, you have the small chance that Mahach just blows up like he does sometimes. But we'll see.
We shall see. But yeah, we'll see if we get a Sinkeraz final next Sunday. But yeah, that's it for me. Thanks everyone for joining. Really appreciate it. Fergus, thank you for coming on and having this conversation. A lot of fun, a lot of interesting topics in the tennis world, and really looking forward to this final Masters 1000 event. Really
thanks very much, Brenna. Great as always. And we will, we'll probably be a Sinkeraz final next Sunday, but we'll see. Maybe we'll spring a surprise. Maybe.
We shall see. Thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.